Well, I sure hope I'm in the right world line this time. Let me check. Well, close enough. At least Kamala's not president anymore. Whew, you do not want to know what that world's like. Well, a little bit of time travel, and I'm back with current events. You can see it. This is a newspaper from September 12th, 2001. And I thought it'd be a fun experiment to kind of look back and see what the news, or how the news, talked about the September 11th attacks. So why don't we take a look? Okay. This is from my local newspaper, the Sun News, which actually the the building that used to print these out is now Palmetto State Armory. So I guess that's good. Evil strike. I know, if you can tell, the headline has been a little bit damaged, as I got this in middle school, so and it was secondhand. Somebody else drew on it. I know. I wanted to get a better one, but yeah, I tried. Time travel's tough. World Trade Center destroyed. Global Eagles offer support. Jet crashes into Pentagon. Bush vows to pursue suspects. I thought this was a great image here, other than, like I said, the obvious drawing on it from a middle school teenager. But let's see if we can... This is the stuff that was going on back then. Blood banks flooded with donors. I remember that during that time period, they had so many people give blood that they basically turned people away. I mean, the first day or two, they were fine with it. But after a while, they were like, okay, we got enough for a while now, so we don't really need any more. And you would think people would never say no to that, but apparently they started saying no. But I think it's great that people did do that. Let's go here. This is probably one of the most famous pictures, and it's really terrible that this is, honestly, this is a man's last moments, but as you can tell, it says a powerful image. Now, if you don't know what this is about, basically the people above the fire line on the World Trade Center pretty much figured out that they were doomed. They had no other chance to escape. They knew help wasn't going to be able to reach them. And instead of burning alive, some decided to end it quickly. That's pretty much one of the toughest decisions I think anyone can make. And it shows you the desperation of people at the time. And it's a hard thing to look at, honestly. I mean, every one of those people were just the people with family, friends. I don't really, even I can't look at it too long. It's tough. Now this one's interesting. FAA earlier identified holes in airport security. The aircraft itself became the bomb, and therefore a lot of the effort we had in putting into attempting to detect explosives, bombs, and the like would have had no impact here. So that makes, and this is Douglas Harris, a security consultant. So he's explaining that the thinking at the time was that people would put bombs onto the plane and not consider the plane itself a bomb. You know, a giant thing flying around full of gasoline. Yeah. That didn't occur to anybody. I'm not going to read all of this here. The terrorists who attacked America on Tuesday by turning jumbo jets into giant bombs did so by getting through airport security and sneaking weapons aboard 4 airliners that took off within 12 minutes of each other. If the pilots were killed or otherwise incapacitated, it would be relatively simple to steer a jumbo jet into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, aviation security experts said. So they're making it seem as if this was not something they thought about. You would think they would have thought about this. It's kind of sad that this was not something that anyone ever thought could ever happen. The aircraft itself became the bomb, and therefore a lot of the effort we had been putting into attempting to detect the explosive bombs and the like would have had no impact, said Douglas Harris, chairman of the security consulting firm Anacapa Sciences in Santa Barbara, California, and a former member of the National Academies of Sciences study on airport security. You get enough weaponry on board an airplane until you can take control of the airplane, said Eric Doughton, a former senior Federal Aviation Administration advisor who is now director for Centers of Aerospace and Safety Education at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University of Florida. Most likely the terrorists smuggled plastic or composite weapons through the metal detectors that passengers passed through. Now, I remember, if I'm correct, it was box cutters that were the weapons of choice. And I could easily see those being snuck in. And the sad thing is, I could see those probably getting in today. And I call on anybody in the FAA to really challenge that and hopefully tell me I'm wrong, please. I would love to be wrong about that and say that this is not possible. But I can see that just easily getting. Have you ever seen a box cutter? It is it's a long rectangle with a blade inside this metal container. It's thin. It looks honestly like a broken piece of a machine until you pop the blade out. And it's generally used for opening boxes. It's very effective at that. That's what it's for, but it's also a sharp blade. And you could totally do some damage with that. And when it's concealed in the metal thing, it will look like a metal rectangle. So I really hope that security is looking for what, I guess metal rectangles. But I have my doubts. I really hope I'm wrong on that. But let's go back to let's go to the next slide here. I have most of this paper right here, pretty much scanned in, and I wanted to look at a good chunk of it here. This right here on the left here is the attack on the Pentagon. I don't know if you can see it with my face over it, but it shows you how deep it went in. It took years to repair this as well. I think I skipped a page. Oh, maybe I didn't. Okay. First shock, then anger. You see the plane right here about to hit. I'm not one of those people who think this is some big, giant conspiracy theory. I never did. I was there when it happened. And I remember that it was generally a leftist talking point, which is ironic now because you find people on the far right now, adamant that Bush was involved and that he set this up and that there were explosives on there and that jet fuel can't melt steel beams. I've seen the math on this. I am more convinced that a plane caused the destruction than a series of explosives. And there's a picture going on. It's viral for some reason. It's all over my Facebook every time I look, and it's a picture of the plane right before it makes impact. A slide by slide shot, and the plane, when it touches the building, it lights up. People are like, "Ooh, that's the sign of the bomb." You take anything and put enough energy into it, it's going to release some light, and that plane going hundreds of miles an hour, a lot of mass, hitting a lot of mass at the same time, you're probably going to see some light. And you mean to tell me that not only were they able to keep all the detonations a secret in the buildings, that they were able to time them so perfectly that they would hit and start on the exact moment when the plane touches the building? You want me to believe that? No. If you work in any field where you deal with machines, construction, and these would be construction demolitions, that's basically impossible. There is too many humans involved to make that work. You have a human driving the plane. You have a human that had to set up the timers. If there's a timer, it could be remote done. And if it's remote done, you mean to tell me that somebody can do that perfectly and hit the button at that moment? And not only hit the button at that moment, but it takes time for that signal to make it all the way there, if that was done that way. No, it's just not possible. There is more reason to believe the planes caused the buildings to collapse than a series of explosions. And back to my original point before I got distracted here. Back then they wanted you to believe that Bush masterminded this. Bush, the guy they also said was the dumbest president they ever heard of. That was his running gag for years, and probably still, if you really think about it. Look back on all the jokes made about him. They're all that he's dumb. And I never thought he was. He graduated, I think, from Yale. I mean, that sounds pretty hard to me. Must be pretty smart to do that. You want me to believe that in the same sentence you're going to say, oh, this guy masterminded this, and he's also completely dumb. Well, you must be pretty good if he convinced, the general public that this was a real thing and that he wasn't involved and that only the few small people would understand it. There's actually a psychological aspect to this. People like to think that bad things happen because of bad people. And this is true. Bad people did do these things. But they need answers more than just that people are evil. More than that someone just hates America. And it's a psychological thing, and I can't remember the name of it, but it is basically they are looking to make sense of the world around them, and if they can, they will put people into conspiracies to make them make sense. And while some conspiracies end up being true, I don't think this is going to be one of them. This will make you a little angry, if I can zoom in correctly here. Global sympathy dwarfs celebration. Governments worldwide offer condolences to America that looked more vulnerable than ever after Tuesday's terror attacks, with thousands of Palestinians celebrated in the West Bank and in Lebanese refugee camps. People on every continent watched the horror as astonishing images of the terror in the United States filled their TV screens, but people in the West Bank town of Nablus, Palestinians cheered and distributed candy to passers-by. Iraqi television played a patriotic song that began with "Down with America" when it showed the World Trade Center collapsing. The Palestinian leader, to his credit, Yasser Arafat, offered his sympathy to Americans and said he was horrified by the devastating attacks, which also hit the Pentagon. Even most leaders in the Middle East offer support. Even Afghanistan's Taliban condemned the attacks. And they rejected suggestions that Osama bin Laden was involved. Of course, not going to say. I mean, come on. You harbor the guy who did it. You're not going to say, "Oh, he did it. Come get us." We were really quick to know that it was Osama bin Laden, though. I will say that is one thing that that the conspiracy theorists have right. It's awfully quick for us to know. They're quoted in saying, "It's premature to level allegations against a person who is not in a position to carry out such attacks," said Abdul Samal Zif, Taliban ambassador in Pakistan. It's a well-organized plan, and Osama has no such facilities. I see why we go to war with these people. I see why we go to war with these people. And I remember the videos of that night of people in the West Bank, in the Gaza Strip, celebrating the death of thousands of Americans. Not thousands of military, not thousands of government, workers that, represent the people that oppress you in some way. Nope. Ordinary Americans who just happened to go to work that morning. Thousands of them. And they celebrated that. You ever wonder, if you ever start thinking that these people are following the right religion, this shows you that they're not. There's always a few crazy people in every group, but these people have thousands upon thousands that cheered death of people. In fact, even down here, it even quotes and saying, "God is great." There are no reports of celebrations elsewhere in the West Bank and Gaza. I know this report says there wasn't. That was on the 2nd, or the 12th. They probably didn't know yet, but I'm pretty sure Gaza also had some. Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, whose Hamas group has carried out a series of suicide bombings in Israel, said he was not interested in exporting such attacks to the United States. It's kind of that's just disturbing to hear, honestly. All right, let's move on before I get too angry. Ooh. This one is depressing. At some point, people on planes were able to call. And you were able to call, and basically you knew what was going to happen. They were herded to the back of the plane by hijackers with knives and box cutters. They were ordered to call relatives to say they're about to die. It's this that really makes you glad that Flight 93 took the plane back. What really bothers me, more than anything else, well, not more, but one of the things that bothers me the most is that they didn't evacuate the second building until it was too late. The failure to understand that this was a real thing and that this was bad should have been a thing. That should have been the first thing. They should have said, let's clear out the area. And because you don't know whether that building's actually going to collapse. Now, they were confident it wasn't. We were so confident in our machines and our technology and our buildings and our structures that we were like, this can't fall. Yes, it can. Anything made by man can fall and eventually will. The failure to evacuate the second building before it got too late, that's the problem. Assuming that we were safe when we had clear evidence to the contrary is the problem. I remember watching a documentary on the History Channel, and I cannot for the life of me find the video for it. I've been looking for years. If you have reference to it, I would love to hear about it. But they were doing a documentary on the World Trade Center towers, doing a whole thing about how they were built and everything, all that good stuff. It's an interesting thing. And they have one of the designers, I forget his name, he's on camera, and he said, yeah, these are strong buildings, because I think they made a reference to one of the, a small plane that crashed into one of the into a building, I think the Empire State Building, by accident. It was a small plane. And he was referencing how sturdy the World Trade Center buildings were, based on their design, their exterior shell construction. And he was like, yeah, a 747 could crash into this and they'd stay standing. That was a real thing. I don't know if it was 747 or 727, whatever. It was one of those 7-number planes. A commercial airliner could crash into this and it would stay standing because he designed it so well. I believe he was in the buildings when that happened, and I think he passed away in the attacks. And I just found that to be the most interesting connection. It's kind of like you predicted it. And I can't find the video. I wish I could. If I could find it, it'd be really interesting to show it. But sorry, I get a little emotional about it. It's just, you don't think that these things are going to happen until they do. Bush attacks, acts of mass murder, asked for prayers. They gave him a hard time. They don't have a picture of it here, for still reading the book to the children, finishing the book before the children, before he left the children, because they whispered in his ear. You probably seen the picture where the Secret Service guy whispers in his ear while he's reading a children's book. He finishes that and then leaves. Now, people question that. And it was a big deal. I never questioned it. I never thought it was the wrong move. There was nothing really he could do. He's a policymaker. He's not a first responder. Work's already done to secure everything. And he didn't want to scare a bunch of children. So you finish reading real quick and then you go. I don't think that was a bad move. There wasn't much he really could do at the moment that was going to save anyone's life. So I think that was a good move. He has had worse moves, like his dealing with Katrina, but this was not one of them. Let's see. Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist attacks. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, and military, federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. This was what changed Bush's presidency. He ran on the platform of not doing nation building, which is exactly what he does after this. He changed his tune entirely. We built a nation in Afghanistan. We built a nation in Iraq. Granted, I can't say these people didn't deserve it. I'd probably invade a country too who celebrated the death of my people. Oh, you're going to laugh about it. You're going to cheer it? Really? Well, funny thing. Yeah, I'd invade too. And I don't think the military would mind one bit. This is, I'm in South Carolina, so Carolina's on high alert. Buildings will not be closed. This is the continuation of the blood donation. That was going well. Do I have another shot of the Iraq? Here we go. Iraq claims it shot down unmanned spy plane. This just shows you that we were interested in the region long before this all happened. Second unmanned U.S. spy plane has been downed by Iraq in less than a month, Baghdad said Tuesday, following American reports that Iraq was beefing up its abilities to strike U.S. and British aircraft patrolling no-fly zones over Iraq's north and south. U.S. military spokesperson said a plane was missing and its loss was being investigated. Official Iraqi news agency reported that wreckage of the downed aircraft carrying highly advanced equipment had been found. It did not mention any pilots. Let's see. Earlier Tuesday, the Iraqi agency reported that a U.S. spy plane was shot down at 11:30 a.m. near the southern city of Basra, 350 miles south of the capital. The plane was coming from Kuwaiti territory and was used to provide the American enemy with information concerning our installations, vital sites, and our air defense formations. The news agency said, quoting an unidentified spokesman from the Iraqi Air Defense Command, Iraqi spokesman said, the plane was shot down in revenge for the martyrs of Great Iraq and Free Palestine, according to the agency's report. So if you think that these problems are new, they're not. We've been dealing with these kind of problems, Free Palestine, for 24 years. Longer than that, honestly. I don't see how they have a legal authority at that time to shoot down a U.S. spy plane. They were under a no-fly zone. After the first Gulf War, we let their government stay in power, and that was one of the conditions. You have a no-fly zone, no weapons of mass destruction, which they never did find. Although, to be fair, I've heard rumors that they moved them into Syria. And considering Syria has been using some, might be true. But I digress. All right. Let's see what's next here. Okay, this is not related to the World Trade Center, but this is actually an interesting story, and I'm going to just briefly go over it. In the 90s, and up until recently, you had Monopoly at McDonald's. If you remember, you have a little thing that you peel off the large drink or the french fries or burger or whatever, and you match them up and you get Monopoly. You know, you get all the little properties and you win. In reality, generally, you win more food or nothing. Most of the pieces are, you get one of the set, but you never could get the other one because it was like, that's the rare one. That's the one that actually gives you the win. The other one was just there for, for looks. Supposedly, and I'll read part of this here. A man accused of stealing millions in a McDonald's contest scheme apparently gave a $1 million gift to St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital nearly 6 years ago, 1995. Let's see. The accused is Jerome Jerry Jacobson, and he sent them the winning piece. He said, a St. Jude spokesperson said the instant winner piece had arrived in a plain white envelope with a Dallas postmark with no return address. McDonald's verified that the piece was real and waived the rules that require such pieces to be redeemed only by winners and agreed to pay St. Jude $50,000 a year for 20 years. So they redeemed it. That's awesome. I think that's great that St. Jude gets it. They're a great facility. They do a lot of great work. So if you're looking for a place to donate money to, I like St. Jude. I think they help a lot of children and families in general. They, let's see, he was indicted Monday, alleged conspiracy, charged to bring his members with mail fraud. Director of Security for Simon Marketing embezzled more than $20 million worth of McDonald's game pieces from his employer. McDonald's had contracted with Simon to run its Monopoly games. He distributed the winning game pieces to accomplices. He redeemed them or recruited others to redeem them for prizes. Some is worth as much as $1 million. Maybe that's why I never won. Just saying here. So that was a big deal back then, and I believe it happened again. I'm not sure, but I remember that happening, and that was, this is pretty much the only bit of news that isn't related to September 11th in this paper. I'll take it back. This is also kind of not related. Ethnic Albanians turn in faulty guns. A third of the rifles and other field weapons so far surrendered by ethnic Albanians in Macedonia do not work and may not have been used in recent fighting. This is why gun buybacks don't work. Just saying. No one's going to turn in a gun that is worth a lot of money or works and they could just keep. But they will turn in broken guns that are like, well, I can't get any money for it. No one's going to buy this. It's a piece of junk. Or I stole a bunch of these and I don't want to go to jail. I believe most of the time you can turn in these guns and nothing happens. I could be wrong on that. Don't take that as gospel. But that was going on then as well. America will punish these. This is the opinion section. It's not the big opinion, so, it's quite as good as me, but, Let's see if I can get it. I think I have a zoomed in shot. Basically, people are responding to this. And I don't think really a whole lot of people in America at the time were on different sides of this issue. There weren't people that said, well, they have a right and we understand because we're the oppressors. No one thought that. If you did, you were ostracized. One of the most interesting things I have here, though, is a news story, and this is how big it is. And I remember this. I saw it on the news that night, and no one ever talked about it ever after. Explosions rock Kabul as America denies involvement. I remember watching on the news the night of September 11th, and they were showing video of rockets raining down in the capital of Afghanistan. And that was the only time I ever heard about it. That piece of news just disappeared into the fray after this happened. This article here says that America does not say we did it. We admit that we did not. I think that we totally did. But they are going to claim that the rebels in Afghanistan did it. The Northern Alliance, I believe, is what they were called at the time. I don't know what they're called now. They were the ones that were responsible. Afghanistan at the time was divided. The northern section of the country was run by rebels. More friendly to America rebels, fighting for freedom. And they ended up helping us in the invasion of Afghanistan. Which makes this all so bad when Biden screwed it all up a few years ago. Now Afghanistan is probably, it's worse off for everybody who lives there, all the citizens, and it's worse off for the world because now not only are the same people that harbored Osama bin Laden back in power, they also have a bunch of United States military equipment. Yeah. Good job, Biden. I would have never left. I would have kept the base and said, we're not leaving. This is ours now. We needed a base there. We should have kept it. In fact, if I was president, I'd invade and take that base back. Anyway, let's keep going. Oh, this is a TV guide. Back in the old days, you actually had printed things that told you what was on TV that night. This is how old things are. Lost was on NBC. I thought Lost was an ABC show, though. Am I wrong on that? Maybe I am. I have to check that. I think Lost was bought by ABC eventually. Drew Carey Show, 2020. Frasier, great show if you're looking for something great to watch. You can find it. I don't know what streaming service it's on now, but awesome. UPN, Star Trek Voyager, also one of the best Star Treks out there. Drew Carey Show is everywhere. Crocodile Hunter, American Justice. Let's see what else we got. Cartoon Network, Dexter's Laboratory, Ed, Edd n Eddy, Powerpuff Girls, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Johnny Bravo, Flintstones, Scooby-Doo, Bugs and Daffy Show, and Tom and Jerry. Boy, they had some good shows back then. Let's see. South Park, still going on. Daily Show with Jon Stewart at 7 o'clock. I wonder what that show was about. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Ripley's Believe It or Not. That was such a good show. Dean Cain hosted it, and I found it to be the most interesting thing ever. I kind of do like, I'm glad I'm ending this video on something a little more fun. At least it kind of, you can kind of leave this and not be, not be too depressed. It's the HBO, Brady Bunch movie, Band of Brothers. I never got into Band of Brothers. Never been a military movie guy. I mean, I like some of them, but it's not my thing. This is one of the things, even the sports section was standing firm with solidarity with America. It really goes to show you that everyone was on the same side. Bush's approval rating was over 90%. He was the most approved president in history. I think even more than George Washington at the time. That's why he was able to do everything he wanted to do. When he invaded, round of applause. Even when he invaded Iraq, round of applause. And I can't say, I mean, a lot of people disagree. Trump disagrees with the invasion of Iraq. He thinks it was a terrible idea. He might be right. But at the time, it sure seemed like it was the right decision. And I can't say, looking back, that the world is less safe because of those decisions. I think the world is still more safe because of what Bush did than what we could have done. If we would have did nothing, I think we'd have a problem in Iraq still. Iraq is now a reasonably stable country with decent amount of freedom for its people. So I think it's a whole lot better than having a dictator there who drops bombs on his own people. They executed Saddam Hussein. Not America. His own people tried him in a court, found him guilty, and executed him. Kind of happens when you target your own people. What do you think was going to happen? Anyway, that is a good chunk of this paper here we looked at. Didn't read all of it, but I thought this was an interesting throwback to look back in time and see how the world did things and what was talked about back then. I'd like to talk to you about this in the comments. If you were from the time period, if you remember it, great. If you're young and you were born in 2001, well, look up the news. There's a tool on Google that lets you select the years for your search. Do a few searches like that. Search for the news from back then. See how people talked. See what was going through their heads. You might be surprised that maybe they think just the same as you. Or maybe they don't. I think nothing has really changed in people's minds, but I digress. Anyway, have a blessed day, and we'll see you next time.